Pastor Hank, is there anything we need to be concerned about? I tell you what my concern is still that we get too comfortable and like, oh, this is great, all this business is coming back, and we just, it was Jerry Falwell said in the 80s, in 1988, the problem with Christians is they quit when they're winning, they quit when they're losing, that we just need to quit quitting. My concern is that's exactly what we'll do, is we'll just go, hey, we got this thing licked, and take our hands off the wheel. Are you concerned about that?
Well, that's why I'm really not, because I feel like, what the people went through, the harsh season, I think they've had enough, and that is the motive of a righteous rebellion right now. People are saying, look, we don't ever want to go back to what it was. And so I think there's always that comes in with complacency, but I think that's why we need FlashPoint. It's why we need to continue to do things like with Patriot Academy, educate the people. And I think we have to do what Judges 8 says. Even though we may be faint at times, we need to keep pursuing. And I don't think we're going to ever go back the way we were. I think the level of evil that people got tired of is a motivating factor that we're going to continue to go forward and ride this wave of God's blessing.
Speaking about a wave, there are some things that are happening. And Mark, I want you to break this down, because listen to what Bill Maher had to say about blue states. They're losing their seats. Watch.
California is projected to lose 3 seats, New York 2, also going to lose a seat, Minnesota, Oregon, Rhode Island, Illinois, all blue states. Who's getting these? Texas, Florida, Idaho, and Utah. I mean, this looks like game over.
What he's talking about, Mark, help us understand. Why is that game over?
Well, it's really interesting. The census in 2020 was wrong, and the Census Bureau has admitted this. There are at least 7 seats that should have gone from blue states to red states. So just think of the congressional balance with 7 additional red seats. And more importantly, think of the Electoral College with 7 additional red seats. Now, this is as of 2020. That doesn't take into account what I call the Great Migration that took place post-2020 during the height of COVID. We don't know exactly how many people moved from blue states to red states, from the north to the south. And then add on to that fact that the red states have a higher rate of population increase. In other words, people in red states have more kids. You could be looking at an automatic swing of 12 to 15 seats by 2032.
Van Jones says we just can't be mad. Watch.
If progressives have a politics that says all white people are racist, all men are toxic, and all billionaires are evil, it's kind of hard to keep them on your side. And so we might want to think about, if you're chasing people out of the party, you can't be mad when they leave. And maybe if we had a different politics, we actually said dignity for everybody, everybody's respected, and we need you, more people might stay. Okay,
Rick, now, of course, here on the conservative side, we like what he's talking about. But this is setting up, something's coming, and I'm not trying to be a downer here. I still believe, like Pastor Hank said, I believe we're winning here. But I'm really curious as what we're going to see come, because they're poking at things, and I'm going to show you one with AOC here in just a moment. But does any of this have a concern for you? And when you look at these things like what Van Jones is saying?
Well, not enough people are listening to what Mark just said. This is huge. The level of corruption on the money side of things is what everybody's thinking about and talking about right now. The level of corruption on the electoral side of things cannot be forgotten. And what Mark just described is just a drop in the bucket to the corruption at the census. Not only did Joe Biden tweak the formula on day one when he came in before the census went into effect, and not only did the court stop President Trump from refusing to count illegal aliens and all of those things, when you take all the corruption out, when you go back to just the constitutional provision, the enumeration clause, and only just count legal citizens in homes, I believe you'll see more like a 30 or 40 seat switch from Democrat to Republican in the House. And that would represent more closely the American people in the House and the Senate. And what does that mean? That means on every bill, on every expenditure, you've got a significant change in the representation in Congress. And so this is a big, big deal. I'm actually pushing for a constitutional amendment right now that would actually require only the enumeration of legal citizens to prevent them from manipulating this ever again. And I don't think that President Trump has to wait until 2030 for this. We've been saying this for a while, that if you can show that they messed this up in 2020, and you can show that they counted people they should not have counted, and you can show that Joe Biden manipulated by changing that formula. And by the way, he only had to tweak it a little bit for those 7 to 10 seats that Mark's talking about. Why not redo the census right now? President Trump should demand that. He should do an executive order, let them challenge it and take it all the way to the Supreme Court. Constitution doesn't say that it's only every 10 years. It says within 10 years, you could do it right now. So this is a big, big deal, and it's a level of corruption that allows them to have the corruption on the money and everything else. We've got to fix this part for the future of our federal government.
So you're saying you believe that the census was rigged? Is that right? Am I getting that right?
There's no question about it. They blatantly admit they counted people that we would all argue is unconstitutional to count. And then they use this formula because they don't actually count every home, right? So they have to extrapolate on the formula. And they didn't like the way that President Trump's formula extrapolated. So it didn't take much for them to manipulate. It was 7 to 10 seats that it changed. But the big issue is, who are you actually counting? And if they go back to only counting legal citizens, you're talking about a massive swing. Because think about it, the blue states are where all the sanctuary cities took place. So you're getting them out of those blue sanctuary cities and not allowing them to have the same numbers and representation in Congress. And long term, it's super healthy to just get back to a very simple form. And forget all these questions about how many bathrooms you have and how much money do you make. That's why I don't use the word census. That's not a word in the Constitution. It's the enumeration. Let's get back to that, and we'll have actual representation in Congress that reflects the people. And if the American people go blue, then I lose in terms of having red, but it should absolutely be based on legal citizens. That's the only fair way to do this, and it ought to be done. I'm talking about right now. Think about how hard they're charging in all these areas. They don't care about the pushback. Man, they need to be charging in this area, and maybe they are, and I just haven't heard about it yet, but I hope he demands the census, now I'm using the word, that the enumeration be redone and soon.
All right, so what can we do? How can we help that? I mean, because I think that's a brilliant idea. We should demand that. And who do we put pressure on to make that happen?
Well, the White House is the one that's going to have to push it, because Congress is planning on waiting until the 23rd. Well, they'll start doing the census in 2028 or 2029. They'll start doing the process of it. But honestly, I don't know who has or who the president has appointment power over in terms of who he needs to demand this of right now. I'll get back to you on that. I'll do my homework, because that is a pressure point. FlashPoint Army could start pushing on that pressure point. So by tomorrow night, I'll have you an answer.
Thank you, and I believe we should do that. I believe we should do. What do you think, Mark? You agree with that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Rick, and I think it fits with everything else that the president's doing right now, which is he's moving everything now, and this is one of the reasons for his success right now. Is he's not doing things sequentially. He's not waiting around. He's flooding the zone, and the Democrats are struggling to react to that. The only thing that they've got right now is the lawfare, and even that's kind of being slowly brushed aside. So I think this would be another large play that would really confuse the left. They'd really struggle with it.
Well, I think we may have a job for us to do. All right, get back to us. Let me know what we can do, Rick. And look, if you are at home, if you are thinking, man, I really missed out, I should have done Rick Green's Biblical Civics course, even though it doesn't have Gene Bailey in it. I probably should have really done that. It's not too late. You can go to biblicalcivics.com, and you can go there, and Rick has made it very affordable. You can download it for any amount. If you want the physical copies, there's a charge for that. But you can start. Rick, they could start tonight after the show, couldn't they, if they went online and did that?
Man, absolutely. They could do it on their own. They could create a class that they invite friends over to do with them this week, or get it started at their church in the next week or two. There's so much wealth of information in there. And folks, it's not even though Gene Bailey's not in it. It's because Gene Bailey's only on the landing page. There's your sales pitch right there. You get Gene 3 nights a week. So in Biblical Civics, you get David Barton and Mark Meckler and Kirk Cameron and all these other folks. Anyway, no, it's really fun. And even just watching that video Gene and I made on that landing page is fun. So go to biblicalcivics.com.
That's right.
Free, get started. And Gene, we put about 1 million through it. The goal is to have 5 million go through it before the big anniversary, the 250th of the nation, man. We're what are we, 466 days, I think it is, before the 250th birthday of the nation. So we got to get busy.
I'm just impressed you pulled that number off the top of your head. I'm not even going to check it. That sounded so convincing.
I hope I was close.
Yeah. All right. So, listen, some of you are going, well, I want to study the Bible. Well, listen, you're going to get Bible in the middle of that biblical civics. And I really love it when people say, well, there's no teaching about government in the Scripture. I don't know what Bible you're reading, but there's a whole lot about the government in there. And so you need to get a part of biblical civics, go learn it. It will be something you enjoy. And I can't tell you, Rick, how many people I still meet. And I sent you a picture of one at the Turning Point Faith Summit. She came up to make sure that I knew she was a Rick Green coach. And I said, really? I mean, like, really? You're doing that? So she was quite proud of herself. It is great. It's great.
And anybody can do it, bro. You don't have to have any background in history or government, or you don't have to be as smart as Mark, or as good looking as Hank, or as tall as Gene, or whatever. Anyway, anybody can do it. And I have 12-year-olds that host this class and 90-year-olds that host this class. All they got to do is hit play, and it's fun, it's entertaining. And Gene, you said something minutes ago that it fits here. You were saying you're worried about people quitting or just thinking it's done, or Trump's going to take care of it, or hey, Mark and Rick and they'll go take care of it. No, man, now's the time to press the gas, and you can use these classes to gather people that right now are going, okay, what's next? The election's over. What do I do now? The class will show you what to do next. Now's the time to press the gas. No question about it. Your concern is spot on. We have to keep people going because it's like a snowball thing right now. If we can keep the momentum going and we really get going fast downhill, we'll win those midterms big time. Trump will get 4 good years instead of 2 good years. And then, Lord willing, like we've been saying here on FlashPoint, we'll get 4 good generations out of this.
Amen.
But we got to press the gas right now.
Yeah, Pastor Hank, you've done this at your church. You haven't you?
Yeah. Yes, I was hoping you were going to call on me here because, what we decided to do is, listen, we had to make sure people understood the biblical worldview. They need to get a healthy understanding of that. And also our great history that the liberals were trying very hard to take away from us. The rhinos were compromising it. So I bring Rick Green in. Actually, those of you, he's going to be here Wednesday in Omaha, Nebraska at our midweek service. I'll be there along with Rick. We're also going to be live streaming it. And I'm challenging some of you pastors, tune in or go back and watch it at our church. And I'm telling you, you're going to want to have your congregation go through it and maybe even bring Rick in. He's really a great guest to have. I also bring you, Gene, in and others because I want our people to understand really what is going on in our country, but also what is our great history, what's our Constitution, and really what is the correct biblical worldview.
And part of that, I think everyone watching tonight would probably say having a chaplain in your school is probably a good idea. My next guest, Rocky Malloy, was on. If you don't remember, we're going to bring you back up to speed. But before we get to him, watch this.
Our nation needs cultural transformation now more than ever. Anxiety, depression, and hopelessness have reached epidemic levels among students and teachers. Educators are suffering burnout at staggering rates. Violence and disciplinary issues in schools are reaching all-time highs, and schools are suffering from nationwide shortages of counselors. This is where the National School Chaplain Association steps up. We deploy trained and certified school chaplains that provide guidance to students and teachers, oversee spiritual care, and aid in times of crisis. The results speak for themselves. Schools with chaplains see increased school safety, mental health, self-respect, and motivation. They also see decreased disciplinary issues, violence, and teen pregnancies. Today, after successful school chaplaincy legislation in Texas, Florida, and Louisiana, the National School Chaplain Association is working with more than 15 other states to file school chaplaincy bills in 2024 and 2025. This is a national movement bringing God back to public schools for the first time in over 60 years.
Okay, Rocky Malloy, explain to me about these states that have made changes with the chaplains. Do we have any data, hard data to go on that it's really working?
Well, Gene, we have 36,000 schools with chaplains overseas, and that's what Texas and Louisiana and Florida want here. So we have substantial amount of data overseas, and we're just rolling out here. There's only a few dozen schools with chaplains in them so far because the legislation's kind of fresh.
So what do we do to help that? How do we get that shifted? How do we get that changed? What should we do?
We need chaplains. We need at least 1,300 chaplains just for the state of Texas, and we need about 500 for Louisiana. And as the video said, we've got chaplain legislation running across the country, but any school can have a chaplain. They don't need legislation to do it.
So we're talking about not just private schools. You're saying public schools have the rights to have a chaplain.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Every public school in the United States can have a chaplain if they want one.
So it seems to me like this is something we ought to be taking to the school board for sure and pushing on. Is that right?
Yes, sir. It's very important for the school board to be on board, but they don't have to be on board. Anybody can be certified as a chaplain that's already working in schools. And I believe it's so important because parents want safer schools. They want less teen pregnancies. They want their children to graduate. And chaplain has proven to do all those things because it changes the culture of a campus.
Now, before I'm going to bring Rick Green here in, but I want to ask you, Rocky, there on your website, is that where people, I mean, obviously they can find more about it, but do you have training links or ways to get them trained?
We have ways to qualify people and train them. Our training is recognized by the U.S. Department of Education with some FBI and first aid training and other things to certify people. When they're certified, they receive a badge, qualify as a first responder, which is so critical on campuses.
Yeah. So what kind of, how come we're not seeing more of this? What's your biggest pushback you've had?
Well, the bad people do not want God in school. And the only reason for the legislation is for states to pay the chaplains. Anybody can volunteer as a chaplain in school. But once you're on staff, then you have unlimited access to that campus so that you can spend time with the teachers and the students and even the families and parents.
Rick, let me bring you into the conversation here. I mean, it seems like school chaplains, this is a no-brainer. Should be something we all want.
Yeah, it's a big shift. You know, Rocky does a fantastic job on this. I'm so glad to see so many legislators running with the legislation to get it done, because a lot of times with these schools, even if you know you can do it, it's constitutional, Supreme Court's ruled well on it, they have these attorneys that are not, they don't know what they're doing, and they just immediately think separation of church and state. They don't know what that means. Right. And so they just say no, no, no in order to avoid lawsuits. So getting the legislation passed is almost like a hall pass, right? It just makes it easier. And also, as Rocky said, then you can get the full-time employee that has the access. But Gene, just think about the common sense side of this. You got all these problems in schools. You got kids that are going through all these difficult things. Wouldn't we want to have more people on campus that are trained and know how to counsel that kid and bring some life and some joy to that kid? I mean, it just makes common sense that we would want to have this.
Sure
and Rocky said it, man. It's the people that don't want God in the equation. They don't want any opportunity for somebody to get good counseling that's biblically based and just psychologically based. And so they're fighting against this. But, man, I'm so thankful Rocky's doing what he's doing. And I hope people will volunteer. I hope they'll step up and say, you know what, I've been looking for something I could do to give back to my community. This could be my thing. And, Rocky, I think he said 1,300 just in Texas that we need. So the need is there. The harvest is plenty. The workers are few. We need some workers out there to sign up and get trained.
Yeah, let me, Pastor Hank, let me bring you here in on this. I want to ask you about, seems to me this would be a perfect thing for the local church to get one of your pastors qualified or whatever and plant them in the school. Man, this is perfectly for the church to do.
Yes. Well, I was just going to say that. I thought, wow, what a great thing for local churches to do with their pastoral staff. But here's what I really want to say, why Rocky is right on the line. FlashPoint Army may not know this, but when I was in my 20s, early 20s, before I went into ministry, I was a juvenile court officer. And they actually funded and placed me as a juvenile court officer in the schools. And my job was to watch over kids. My job was to any kid that was on probation. I had to represent them in court. And I thought back then, wow, if they allow this, why not allow something that has a God factor? Now, here's what's amazing to Rocky's point. Don't think, FlashPoint Army, that parents and teachers and principals, that they don't want this dynamic. They would come to me, the parents, the teachers, the principals, even the kids. They knew I was a Christian, and they would come and ask me for prayer, for counsel, and I would absolutely do it. And it began to be viral. And of course, the juvenile court system got angry at it, and they wound up, telling me to find something else to do. And it was part of my journey for ministry. But here's the point. We have got to do this. God is going to bring the God factor back to our schools. And right now, they've been indoctrinated. They need truth, compassion, and they need the God factor to bring something greater to our kids again and to families.
So good. So I'm sitting here listening to you guys, and I'm thinking, what if you had, if the pastors were educated, their associate pastor goes through biblical civics, and he's a coach as well, and during the day he's the campus chaplain at a local school where your church kids actually go to. How amazing that would be, Rocky, to have all of these doors open. We just need to stand up and walk through them. Or am I making it too simple?
That's good.
No, you guys are doing a great job preaching my class here. Chaplains are a constitutional framework for the Lord, for prayer and faith to come back to school, front and center. We no longer have to be ashamed of our faith and sneak around. A chaplain can represent their faith group boldly and obey the law in a school.
It's truly, Mark Meckler, let me get you to weigh in there. This seems to me part of the change from the bottom up that we've talked about for so long, that we need to change the whole school systems. We need to change at the local government level. This seems to be another piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, look, I got to say, I'm completely stunned by what Rocky said. I had no idea. I didn't know that you could do this. And the fact that most people don't know, if I didn't know, I'm sure most people don't know. I can tell you Grassroots across the country would love this, support it. I represent almost 6 million people at this point. I'm sure most of them don't know about this. I think Rocky needs to speak to all of our folks.
Well, we need to make that happen. So, Rocky, we'll figure out a way to get you at least record a video, and Kate will get it pushed out on our email list. Yeah, Kate, I did it again. Rocky, final words on this. People can go to campuschaplains.org. And again, tell them what they'll find there.
They'll find a path to training to become a certified school chaplain. It'll give you some history. And people mention the legalities. General George Washington instituted chaplains and Articles of Confederation before the U.S. Constitution. 250 years of case law that supports chaplains, because chaplains represent God, not a church denomination. There's no laws in our country against God, and that's why chaplains are a mechanism for us to get back into school, bringing the common sense of biblical wisdom.
So as a chaplain, Rocky, question I have. So if I'm at a public school and I want to be their chaplain, I'm not going to talk about other religions or other faiths. I'm just going to base everything on my beliefs as a Christian. Is that going to be an issue?
Nope. There's 2 executive orders, one from President Trump and one from President Bill Clinton, that have never been challenged. You can share your faith with an intent to win someone over to how you believe, as long as they're not coerced. And when you're a chaplain, you have a badge like this, first responder. You've got identification, like on my thing here. You're clearly identified as a chaplain, so there's no claims of coercion. You're not going to play more football or make a better grade on a test if you approach a chaplain. That's why it's the legal way for this to happen.
Well, I think that's a beautiful idea, Hank. What do you think?
Well, I believe that would be tremendous for our great country. You know, I just got one question. When I talk to pastors as a pastor and I mention stuff like this, go outside the four walls of your church, here's something I would love to ask Rocky or have you discuss, Gene. They always say to me, the Johnson Amendment.
Yeah.
And they cowered and they cave. And I think President Trump needs to make the Johnson Amendment something right now that he throws absolutely out and free these pastors that we've been lied to.
Well,
so how
okay.
does that fit with the chaplaincy?
Well, I think, well, let's talk about Johnson Amendment. Yeah, he could do an executive order, great. And then when the next group gets in, they rescind the executive order and go back to the other. We need legislation passed at at the congressional level to make this forever go away. Am I right? Tell me, Mark, am I right?
Yeah, I would love the congressional legislation, but even that is not permanent because you could get a Democrat administration that reverses that. My opinion, needs to be litigated. We're working on that right now. My colleague Mike Ferris. This needs to make its way up to the Supreme Court, and that behavior by the federal government needs to be made unconstitutional. There's no excuse for fettering the free speech of churches under any circumstances.
Okay, see, that's what I told him. I told Mark we need to have that litigated. Even better. I agree. It needs to go to the Supreme Court. All right, but here's why, ladies and gentlemen, because if we don't, things like this happen. Look at what AOC is doing. Yeah, she's running. It's time to pay attention hyper-locally. Join the school boards. Flood your city council and your state assemblies. Help a local campaign. Up and down the ballot, we need you. Non-electorally, join community group. Local issues and rapid response are key. We build from there. Sounds to me, Rick, like she went to the Obama school of campaigning.
Yeah, being a community organizer. She's going to be instead of going from community organizer to president, she's going to go from congresswoman to community organizer. You know what? It's the nuts and bolts. I mean, Mark knows this better than anybody. It's how the system works. She's doing what we should all be doing out there in our neighborhoods, canvassing, finding people that share our values, bringing them in to do a biblical citizenship class, getting them plugged in. She mentioned school boards, everything else. Hey, they've got the freedom to do that just like we do. Now, I believe we outnumber them in terms of people that actually share our values, but they've been sitting on the sidelines too long. They've been doing, like you said earlier, they quit after the election and didn't stay involved. But look at the opportunities before us, what Rocky's doing with the chaplains, what First Liberty's doing with Coach Kennedy and the Ten Commandments back in schools and courthouses and the national motto, "In God We Trust," getting the nativities. All of these things are just sitting there waiting for us to do this. And that's one reason, Gene, to be plugged in and go to these FlashPoint events. We'll be talking about action items. I mean, we just got such a great window of opportunity to, as we said earlier, press the gas over the next year and a half and gain this ground. So, I mean, look, more power to her. They have the freedom to do it. We've got to outwork them. They outworked us for the last 80 years until the last 4 years, and then we got busy and look at the fruit of the labor and the hard work that we put in. Let's go get more of that fruit.
All right, so listen, we have been sending letters. You have been writing letters and mailing them. I got this email sent to us of a wonderful couple. I don't have their names because they just sent it from their phone. But this is from South Dakota. Look at them. They got their letters together. They're sending them off to Wisconsin to help change the election. This is what you guys do. This is how we change America. This is how we keep doing it. I love it seeing people look at those letters, those beautiful letters, writing, getting them together to send out. Rick, this is America at work.
This is exactly what needs to be done. And, Gene, I got to say, as somebody that ran for Supreme Court here in Texas, barely lost. Actually, I won the primary and then lost the runoff, barely. It is hard to get people to pay attention to a Supreme Court race. It's so hard. It's not, it just doesn't, it's not like running for governor or so many of the other statewide offices. I love the fact that everybody's paying attention to this Wisconsin race. I'm so thankful for John Graves, A Million Voices, and all the folks that are helping with this thing. This is a big, big deal. And I hope it kind of starts where we'll pay attention to these judicial races because they're so important. And we mentioned the justice system earlier. So, man, thumbs up, FlashPoint Army. Way to go. This is a great way to make a difference.
All right, so we're going to leave this. I got 2.5 minutes before we go off there. I'm going to leave the website of millionvoices.org. We still got time to get letters written. We'll get our good friend John Graves back on here and tell us how we're doing. Make sure you do the pull down tab for FlashPoint and get your letters written. You want all the information is there. Don't have time to talk about it. Let's go around and wrap it up real quick. Pastor Hank, 45 seconds.
Well, we're in the time where God is dealing with judges, and his righteousness and justice will prevail. And like the scripture says, God is arising and his enemies are being scattered.
Amen. Okay, Mark, last thoughts?
Yeah, I think the most important thing we can do is exactly what you just showed, which is every citizen owes it to themselves, to their country, to their posterity to be involved and to be doing something. And that means they should be taking biblical civics. They should be involved in Patriot Academy. They should be involved in Convention of States. They should be running for office. Whatever they can do, they have to be involved. It's up to them. And
Rick, go ahead, 45.
I'll close with an apology to law enforcement in Austin if that was taken wrong, what I said earlier. It's the DA you got to worry about. The police department in Austin is fantastic, and it's actually the police association is run by a Patriot Academy grad by the name of Michael Bullock. So keep up the good work, Michael. Keep up the good work, law enforcement. We'll replace that DA eventually, and we'll prosecute these terrorists that are tearing up these or attempting to blow up these Tesla plants.
That's good save. Good save, Rick. It's important. All right. So listen, thank you for watching. I want to, of course, thanks to Rocky Malloy, Mark Meckler, Pastor Hank, and Rick Green for being with me tonight. Next FlashPoints tomorrow night, same time with Lance and Pastor Hank and Rick. We're going to have a good time. We're going to see what is going on between now and tomorrow. Listen, you don't want to miss a minute of it. There's a lot of people out there right now that are coming up with organizations. I've heard we've got the so-and-so army, and I've got this army and that army. Well, you're the FlashPoint Army, and we were one of the first ones out there. Thank you for being a part. Thank you for staying engaged. Listen, we're going to see change in America. And like my friend Mike Lindell says, because the ultimate goal here is revival and reformation. That's what we want to see happen in America. We want to see change at the schools with chaplains. We want to get the right Supreme Court justices in there. We got to get this stuff done. We got a lot of work to do. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for working with us.